From political shifts and economic updates to viral social moments and trending pop culture, we've got you covered with all the information you need to stay ahead. Whether it's breaking news, the latest from social media, or a deep dive into what's really happening on the global stage, you'll find it right here, delivered fast, clear, and to the point.
Beirut. Man, if you've been watching the news, it's unsettling, right? I mean, we're talking about the most intense bombardment in years. And it feels different this time.
It does.
It's not, just another flare-up. This feels like, I don't know, tremors before an earthquake, one that could shake up, everything, the whole region.
Yeah, it has the potential, that's for sure. This isn't just another cycle of the Israel-Hezbollah conflict that we've seen for decades now.
Right.
This has global implications.
Yeah, and that's what we're diving into that. What makes this situation so, uniquely precarious?
Well, I mean, the spark, right. Hezbollah's rocket attacks on Israel. This was October 6th.
Yeah.
But we have to look beyond just the date, and we have to think about what they actually did. These weren't just random strikes. They targeted Haifa, a major city.
Yeah.
And I think the symbolism there is impossible to ignore. This was a direct challenge. Like, they meant to provoke a response, and
but he did. They got it.
Yeah, and a response they got, right. I mean, Israel retaliated.
Yeah.
And they vowed to dismantle Hezbollah's infrastructure in Lebanon. But that begs the question, I mean, what does dismantle actually mean?
Yeah.
What are we really talking about here?
It's a loaded term for sure. I mean, we're seeing airstrikes, right? Suspect weapons depots, command centers, but then it's also stuff that impacts civilians directly. Power grids, bridges. They even hit Beirut's port again.
Right.
Israel's argument is that this is all about, crippling Hezbollah's ability to wage war. But the lines, I mean, they're getting blurred, aren't they? Military targets versus civilian infrastructure. It's a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is where I think it gets even more complicated. This isn't just, two sides, two players, right? Israel versus Hezbollah. It's, Iran's right there in the mix.
Yeah. If you want to understand this situation, I mean, really understand it, you have to look beyond these two main players, because Iran has been they've been their backer for decades. They've been providing them with weapons, funding, intelligence, the whole 9 yards. Some analysts are even saying that Hezbollah's latest move, this escalation, might have actually been, coordinated with Iran.
So if we think about that for a second, I mean, what's Iran's angle? They've got sanctions, they're dealing with international pressure over their nuclear program, there are even people in Iran who are speaking out against the government. It's a lot. So, I mean, why? Why poke the bear? Why make things even more tense?
It's complicated, there's no doubt about it. There are a few schools of thought on this, though. Yeah. Some say Iran is, flexing, right? Trying to project strength, show everyone they're a force in the region, especially now when, frankly, they're feeling cornered.
Yeah.
Other analysts, though, they say, look, Iran is actually trying to start a fight with Israel. They think Iran believes, whether it's true or not is a different story, but they believe they can benefit from that kind of conflict. It's a dangerous game, no question about it. And Iran's, their nuclear program, it just adds this whole other layer to everything.
It's the elephant in the room, right? We all see it, but nobody wants to actually say, the N-word out loud.
Right.
But that fear, it's real.
It's there.
Yeah.
Iran keeps saying, oh, no, it's all peaceful. Our nuclear program is totally fine. But, I mean, come on. The international community, they're not buying it. Not completely.
Right.
They've been going back and forth with the IAEA for years now. And that uranium enrichment, I mean, that's not nothing. Those levels, it raises serious concerns.
Yeah, and on top of that, I mean, you've got leaders in Iran who have literally said, I mean, they've talked about wiping Israel off the map. Now, whether you think that's a real threat or, just politicians trying to sound tough, it doesn't matter. It creates this whole vibe, this atmosphere where things could blow up.
Exactly. And that's, I think, where the possibility of somebody misreading the situation, of miscalculating, it's what keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
Iran might be feeling themselves, right? They might think they're in control here. But they're also dealing with a lot. The sanctions are hurting, people in Iran are angry, and then there's the whole rivalry with Saudi Arabia. It's a lot, even for them. And if they overplay their hand, if they push too far, it could spiral fast.
So, okay, I hate to even go there, but let's say that happens. Hezbollah, with Iran backing them up, they keep hitting Israel. And Israel gets to a point, maybe out of desperation, maybe out of, pressure, but they say, enough! And they retaliate, not just against Hezbollah, but against Iran itself. I mean, what happens then?
And then, well, that's when things get really bad. We haven't even talked about Russia yet. They've been getting closer to Iran, building up that alliance. They're even doing like joint military exercises.
Yeah.
So you have to ask, if Israel takes a swing at Iran, is Russia just going to sit there?
It sounds crazy, right? But then again, a few years ago, did anyone really think we'd be talking about a war in Europe again?
Nope.
And here we are.
History has a way of, coming back around. And we can't forget about the U.S. and all of this.
Oh, right.
They're not going to just sit back if things get really bad between Israel and Iran. They're allies with Israel. Plus, they already have a ton of military power in the region.
So what you're saying is we're looking at this chain reaction, like one thing leads to another, which leads to another. And it could be global.
It's a possibility. And even if we say, okay, no, it won't go global, there's still this whole other thing, this nuclear question mark hanging over everything.
It's the scariest part, isn't it?
It is. The idea that Israel, think about it, they might feel like they're backed into a corner, right? Like their survival is on the line.
Yeah.
And if that happens, well, they have options, including what they call, tactical nuclear weapons.
Okay, hold on. Back up a second. Tactical nuclear weapons. Most people have heard of, just regular nuclear weapons. But what is that? What does that even mean?
It's funny. The word tactical makes it sound, I don't know, almost small, right? Like it's not a big deal. But we're still talking about nukes. We're talking about a whole level of horrible that, it's hard to even wrap your head around.
Right.
They're designed, in theory, to be used on a battlefield.
Yeah.
Against, like, military targets.
Yeah.
Not, wiping out entire cities.
But even, is there really such a thing as a limited nuclear strike?
That's the thing. You set one off.
Yeah.
And then what?
Right.
The fallout, literal fallout from the explosion, but then everything else, the politics, the fear, it goes everywhere. You can't contain that. And then there's NATO.
Oh, man.
Turkey, right. They're part of NATO. And they're right there, right next to all of this.
So this idea that it would stay, a small regional thing, that's not realistic.
As soon as a nuke goes off, Article 5, that's the whole collective defense thing that NATO has.
Right.
It kicks in. An attack on one is an attack on all. And then, then it's not a regional conflict anymore, is it? It's global. And it's nuclear.
So we've basically laid out this nightmare scenario, right? Like this whole Rube Goldberg machine where one thing knocks another thing, and then the next thing you know, well, it's bad. Really bad. But I think it's important to remember this isn't some, game of Risk we're talking about.
Right.
These are real people's lives. It's easy to get lost in the maps and the, the military stuff, but it's people who end up paying the price.
Always. Look at what's already happening. Families hiding, trying to find some kind of shelter, people forced to leave their homes, their lives, everything they know. And this is before we even talk about a bigger war, right? If it escalates, if it goes regional, or, God forbid, global.
Yeah.
The humanitarian crisis, it's almost too awful to think about. We're talking about millions of people displaced, countless lives lost. It would be devastating.
And it doesn't stop there, right? Even if, we're talking about the Middle East, but this would impact everyone, the whole world.
Right. Think about it. Oil, energy.
Yeah.
A lot of it comes from the Middle East.
Yeah.
And I don't just mean if something happens to the oil fields themselves, even if it's just, political instability, it creates uncertainty. The markets react to that. Prices go up. Economies start to wobble. And that means what? Your grocery bill goes up. That trip you've been planning, maybe you can't afford it anymore. It's all connected.
And then there's, everything else. The politics, the alliances. A conflict like this, it forces countries to pick a side. And that can reshape everything. It could create deeper divisions, kind of like back during the Cold War. The U.S. and their allies on one side, Russia and theirs on the other.
And that's when it gets really dangerous. Because that kind of division, it breeds suspicion, it breeds misunderstanding, and that's how mistakes happen. And in this situation, a mistake could be, we've been talking about it this whole time.
It could be the end of everything. So, okay, so we're basically standing on the edge of a cliff here, right?
Yeah.
What do we do? How do we step back from the brink?
It's the question, isn't it? The million-dollar question, and I wish I had, a simple answer. Diplomacy is always the goal. Talking, finding common ground, that's what we need. But it's fragile, Especially now, with everything so tense, the international community, they have to show a united front. They have to make it absolutely clear that going to war, escalating this thing, it's not worth it. Not for anyone.
Okay, but what about, what about us, the people listening to this? It's easy to feel helpless. Like, what can we actually do?
It's true. It can feel overwhelming. But here's the thing. Apathy, that's the real danger. So stay informed. Don't just, glance at the headlines and move on. Really try to understand what's going on. And don't be afraid to ask questions, to challenge what you're hearing. And most importantly, I mean this, hold your leaders accountable. Make them work for peace. Make them try every single option before they even think about using force.
Because, and we've seen this, it's not just a regional conflict. This has the potential to be so much worse. It could impact everyone, everywhere.
Right.
And we can't just sit back and pretend it's not happening.
That's right. This isn't someone else's problem. It's ours. And the choices that our leaders make, they'll determine the future. And that's really, I think, what we need to remember. The future isn't set in stone. It's what we make it. So let's make it count.
That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening. And please stay informed, stay engaged. We'll be back soon with more.
Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to smash that like button. It helps the channel. And if you're new here or just haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future content. Oh, and don't forget to ring the bell icon so you'll be the first to know when we drop something new. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming up.